Alright, today I thought I'd just do a little freaking short video on fusing cakes together. Later on I'll do fusing mortar rounds. But this one today is just gonna show you basically the gist of how I do it. Because we are cutting into cakes using a razor, so I like to take some extra safety precautions. Here today we're using Pyro Star flowers, and it's a 20 shot cake, about 25 seconds long. And what I'm doing right now is basically showing you some safety tips of cutting into a fused cake, because you don't want to. Right here I've already exposed in this cake the fuse going to the last 5 rounds of finale. So using a cake like this, obviously it starts on this side in this corner here, so we already know the last part of the cake. And here's the front of the cake. This one's star I'm actually working on, flower. And we already know that this last row back here is going to be where the last 5 rounds are going off. But what I've done, bear with me because this is kind of a high bench I'm working on, so I can be real close up and see what I'm doing. Got the first 5 rounds over here, starting from the very freaking top right hand corner. It's going to work its way down. It's going to come across, and it's going to work its way back this way. It's going to come across, it's going to work its way back this way. And then with this particular cake, each cake has its own little finale with the ones I'm working with. So on the last 5 tubes, and this part being probably one of the easiest places to get in between, to get at the fuse and fuse it together to the next cake. And you can fuse it any way you want it. I'm just going to do a little demonstration with some pink fast fuse. It's considered safety fuse. Not too fast. It'll take about 20 seconds per 3 feet. For the pink fuse, I could rig yellow in there. I could put quick fuse in there. But right now, for the demonstration, I'm just going by what I got basically already cut up, and that will be ample enough if I want to just go through this and show you real quick. But we know the burn's coming from the top right hand corner, right? And then it's going to come across to this middle row, and it's going to go up this way. It's going to come back this way, and it's very, very good to actually figure out what direction the fuse is burning, especially when you're going to attach a fuse, because the fuse should be attached in a certain method, a certain way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here just like so, and I'm going to fuse this one in right here just like so, in the same direction as the fuse that's burning in the cake. And you can see that's different color fuse. It's a faster burn on the fuse that's in the cake. This one's a little bit slower, but if I'm going to link one cake to the next, this is just pretty simple to do. But a safety precaution, what I use, and you're gonna have to get a few of these, because eventually after a few cuts you will split it. We're going to carefully look down the top of the cake, find the fuse down the side. And you can see where that light is coming through there. Down below is where the fuse is at. And what I like to do with the paint stick is I'll carefully slide it down alongside one of the tubes. See it right there? It's kind of blurry. See if I can focus it up here some. What the heck, camera? And then we'll slide it down very carefully alongside the fuse. And say this is already all taped up and everything, I haven't made the cut. I'll very carefully score it about maybe 3 times. Make sure the cut is all the way through. and then I'll cut it across the top, knowing that I'm far away from my fuse. Very carefully. Should be an easy cut. It's not that, it got a nice sharp knife. It should be an easy cut. And then I'll do the same down the other side. Go along the other side of the fuse. Carefully slide it down. The other side of the fuse, and you see where the paint stick's at in relation with the fuse. So I make my cut right on top of the paint stick. And then the bottom, literally once you cut this part and then this part, this should almost fall right out with a nice sharp knife. You might have to keep changing blades, but it's just a couple little safety tips in cutting into a cake. And I usually make sure I'm like well into it, because we also know, as you can see with it exposed, if I didn't put that paint stick there, I could potentially cut into the fuses that are linked to the tubes. If you do that, there's a good chance you're either going to cut your fuse, cause you more problems, because you cut it that short, you're going to have problems, or you could potentially set off the cake while you're working on it, and you don't want that. So these are just kind of some safety ideas that I use. I thoroughly search for the fuse prior to on any cake, even if I've worked on it before, because you never know, they might have changed something up on it. I've stripped the little piece of paper that covers the fuse off a little bit with my fingernails. Nothing other than my fingernails. If you can find some of those clay sculpting tools that are made out of plastic, you can use those as well. Just try not to generate too much friction on that fuse, because that is a fast burning fuse that's inside the cake. This is the fuse that's going to the finale on this particular cake. And on finale cakes, you will have a faster burning purple fuse, or there's a couple other different kinds of fuses that they use. But I do recommend using pink fuse to wire up to that. And when I say wire, but fuse up to that is what I'll do. Is I'll line that up like that. I'll wrap a piece of masking tape around it, and then I'll throw a couple zip ties on it, and then I will take and tape this whole thing back up, and that'll be on the next segment. Okay, so I'll show you what I did here once I've actually attached the fuse to the internal fuse of the cake. I wrapped it first with a piece of about 1/2 inch masking tape, because working in the cakes, a lot of times, depending on what kind of cake you're using, you're going to have limited space. So I wrapped a piece of fuse around it. Probably used a piece, like right here, you can probably see that's about 1.5 inches of, I always use the tip of my thumb as an inch, but that's about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches of tape. I'd actually say what I wrapped in there was definitely more closer to 1 inch. And I'll wrap that tightly up against the next fuse that's inside the cake, and then I'll hit it with a couple zip ties. And as you can see here, to secure the cake, because you don't want this fuse, because now that it's secure inside the cake, really secure, if you're not careful, you can wind up pulling the fuse from here, or pulling the fuse from here out of that tube, or both, causing damage to your cake. You don't want that to happen. So what I'll do is I'll run probably another strip of tape over here. You already got a piece to hold it up into place there. And what I'll do here, to keep anything from prematurely firing from another firework going off, is I'll put a piece of tape folding the opening back closed. And I'll run another piece of tape across here. And like I said, I'll run another piece of tape across here. That way, when I get to the shoot site, it's just a quick, score of a fingernail, and I can, take and using the same method, take another different burning fuse and attach it the same direction, because it's going to be burning this direction, right? Same direction. I'll take and attach either another cake fuse or another cake and use a couple zip ties on there. I'll wrap a piece of tape around it just like that and put a couple zip ties on there like I showed you internally in the cake now. But I'm just going to go over a couple last little things. As of course, the first thing you're going to do when you start this process is you're going to lightly score all the way around the edge of the cake, being also very careful. Open up the top of the cake. Of course, you'll usually find one of these things inside the top of the cake. You're gonna pull that out of there. Then using a flashlight, you're gonna look down the side of the cake. I don't have a flashlight handy with me right now, but I usually use my my phone, which I'm using now for the video, and I can't do both at the same time, video and flashlight. Why? Why Apple? Why? Not Red Apple, but Apple phones. But and then I will look to see where my fuse is at, making sure when I place the paint stick into the cake that I'm not pushing the fuse down or pushing it out of the way. You do not want to pull, once again, the fuse out of one of the tubes, or you could potentially lead to more problems. Then carefully sliding it down, all the way down. I can't do it now because I got this extra fuse in here, but you get the idea. Carefully down, and then I use this to cut on top of to keep away from the fuse internally in the cake. Then what I'll do once I have it all wired up is I'll throw the piece of cardboard back in there. I'll put this back on there. Then usually I use a larger piece of tape. This is just basically what I peeled off of the piece to wire the fuse inside. I'll basically make sure this is nice and secure. You don't want any hot embers or anything falling in this while it's at the launch site. So I usually, because whether you go down, the hot embers go down the sides of the tubes or whatnot, there is a lot of protection within the cake. And you can see the little foam bars and stuff in there. But along the sides of the cake, and that basically indicates where the fuse is at as well. But just as a safety precaution, because I don't want my cakes to go off early. I want them to go off as I want them to, and that's how you want them to as well, right? So basically that's my idea for fusing cakes, using some safety precautions to keep the cake from damaging the cake, and at the same time using some safety precautions to keep the cake from firing off in your face while you're actually working on it. And right now I got it ready. I can leave that fuse on there, and I can take some fast burn fuse. What did I do it? Oh, it's right here on top of the gear puller. This is quick burn. This is really super fast fuse. Goes really fast. I can't give you a measurement on speed on it, but I know about 3 feet will take about, shoot, I'd say a half a second. So if you want one to say you want this one to come off that pink fuse and go to the next cake really fast, well, while this is attached to the cake, I don't even suggest cutting it. So what I would do is just go high up on the cake, tape that in there, because even with this pink fuse, what's on there, that little 6-inch piece that's on there, that's probably about maybe a second itself. But if you want it to burn faster and get to the next cake, then you can go use some of this stuff and spread it out, say 3 feet away from the next cake. Depending on what your options are or how your layout is, you can, separate it, each cake within 3 feet of one another, saying going from an outward direction from your main racks, or one after the next. You can space them out 3 feet or 2 feet or right up against each other. See, with this like this, you can pretty much go from this cake. See if I can quickly, I got a cake already out that I've already done. And you want to go to the next cake. Well, obviously we don't want to go do this and this. but we could turn this one sideways, or we could butt them corner to corner like so, and maybe put like a couple inches in there. I could literally do, using the same methods that I showed in the video, peel this off of here, peel this main cake fuse off, tape it, zip tie it. You don't, and at that point when you're on the site, you don't even have to bother, you know, clipping the zip ties off like so. And you start with this cake goes off, and then automatically it'll burn to the next cake, and so on and so forth. So you can have a chain of cakes going on. It's not exactly how I plan to do this one, but that gives you guys an idea of how we out there pyros really get into doing some of this cake chains. Can't remember, I'm trying to think of the word that they use, but reconfiguring these cakes so we light one fuse and just have like a little show going off. 4 cakes together, 5 cakes together. I think as many as I've done is about 8 cakes all on one big row, and it actually turned out really well. It's worked every time. I haven't had it fail yet. So this is my video on how to get these cakes pre-wired or pre-fused to burn from one to the next. And if you don't like to go off the final finale area over here and you want them to kind of overlap, then you can take and just tear this little piece of tape off of here again. And like we said in the first half, it burns from this corner going this way, and it comes from this corner and going this way. Well, you got 3 options. You can basically cut it here and have these first 5 go off, and then you can put your, what I call a pigtail in here, or you let the second row go off, and then you can do it down this side as well, or you can use my option and get all the way down to the final finale and go down this way. But there's 3 different options. You got 1, 2 on this end, 3 on this particular 25 shot cake. And this is basically, it doesn't look too freaking sturdy, but I got the fuse taped in. I got the fuse taped here. Now I can turn around and take these cakes, once I get them all put back together, all their safety features in place, and I can carefully slide them right back in their box. And then I'll take the box and actually retape that as well. So when I bring it out to site, I'm not sitting there carrying 4 separate cakes. I actually bring the entire box out with me. That way it makes it a little bit easier for me to unload and load the truck and get my stuff out onto the site.